We're now going to create the second part of our recess area for the electronics to go inside. So we need to be able to create these little squares in here. Now the purpose of these little squares is to hold the battery clip in place and also allow a space between where the battery clip goes and the rest of the lamp to allow space for cables to run. So the battery clip has a screw hole in the middle, that's that little circle there, and then we're going to put a 10mm square for it to sit on so that we can screw it into that, and then we're going to put little lips or little blocks in the side of the corner so that the battery clip can sit nicely on those and doesn't sort of rock from side to side. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Going back to here, we're looking at our lamp. Let's rotate around until we can see underneath. There we go. And we're going to create a sketch, and we're going to create our sketch using this surface here. So we're going to hit create sketch, and we're going to create it on this surface here. Be careful not to click on any of these buttons. Be careful to click on this surface here. So basically I've got this now, and it's just 5 squares and a circle that we need to draw. So the 5 squares are going to basically be in place, and if we go back to our diagram, we can see that they're 3mm by 3mm, and the square in the middle is 10 by 10, and right in the middle it's got a circle in it. I've drawn the hole to be 2 on this one. I'm going to back that off and actually make it probably about 1.4 because it needs to be a bit narrower for the new screws that we've bought. So here we go, we're going to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool. If you don't see the rectangle tool, it's in here. It's a 2-point rectangle tool. I'm going to start from the top corner here, and I'm just going to draw out a shape. I'm going to keep going and draw another one. So I'm going to just draw out my shapes over here. We've got 4 of them, and I'm going to draw roughly a shape in the middle, and now we're going to draw a circle somewhere in there, and the circle. So we've got our rough sort of shapes there. We're now going to use the dimension tool to fix these up. So I'm going to dimension this one up in the top corner. From this line here to this line here, the distance between those 2 lines is going to be 3mm. And for this one here and this one here, it's also going to be 3mm. Now you could just do that all the way around, but an easier way to do it is to use the horizontal and vertical tool. This point here is going to be vertical with that point there, which sets that nicely in place. This point here is going to be vertical with this point here, and you can see that that's set nicely in place. If we do the same thing from here to here, and from here to here, we still haven't fixed it properly because we don't know this height here. So we're going to go dimension, and we're going to set the distance between here and this line here to be 3mm. That's fixed this one over here, but it hasn't fixed this blue line here. So we're going to click the distance between this one here and that one there to also be 3mm. So now we've got our little ones in the corner ready to go. So the final thing we need to do for this one is to be able to put our square in the middle, and perfectly in the middle, and have our circle right in the middle of that square. It's not a square yet, so let's make it a square. The dimensions on this one are 10 by 10. Now, there are a number of different ways of getting it on the middle point, and we're going to basically do it by using construction lines. And this is a method that actually is a bit tricky to understand at first, but we can draw lines that don't form part of the sketch. They're like drawing a pencil dotted line that you're going to use as a guideline. So I'm going to use the line tool, and I'm going to use the construction button over here. Now you can see now that it's just going to draw a line, and if I move over this line, you can see a triangle appears right there. That means it's going to lock to the midpoint. If I move away, it's not there. If I move back there. So if I click and let go, that line is now locked to the midpoint, and you can see it's dotted. If I come across here, I should find the midpoint on this side as well. And now I've got a line that goes perfectly through the middle of that rectangle. We'll also note that we can do it from here, and you'll note that it's following that green line. So I now have a line that goes from there to there in the middle and there to there in the middle. I can use that line. So now I'm going to do the same thing to my square. I've got a line here that goes from lock point here to the middle point there. And I've got a line there, and you'll notice that it's a bit tricky. This one's actually already perfectly on the center, I believe. So I'm going to go from here to here. And you can see that they're orange. Those lines are orange. That means that they're not locked in place. That line there should be on the same line as this one here. So let's use the collinear button. Click on that line and click on this line. And now they're locked in place. Click on this line and click on this line. And now they're locked in place. We can also see that this point here, this circle here, should also be in place for there. So you notice that it didn't lock in place for some reason. I'm not quite sure. So let's use the collinear button again. Yep, it's not locking in place for that one. The other way we could, of course, do this, because it's not locking in place because I drew it too close, is just to go from here to here and set that to be exactly 5 millimeters. It already was, and that's why I was having trouble, but we're going to do it that way. So we've got that line there. We need to lock this onto that little point there. So basically we should be able to use the coincident button and use the point and on that one. So it's now going to line up on that line. I'm going to use the coincident button again. I'm going to press on the point and this line here. It's now locked in the middle. The final thing we need to do is to dimension the circle. And remember on the diagram, it was 2. We're going to actually change that down to 1.4, which is quite a small circle. And we're going to press, I'll zoom out and we'll see that we've got it pretty much right. You can see that those dotted lines are still there, but they don't form part of the sketch. So if I go stop sketch, you can see them there, but they're not part of it. Let's just go in here. So if we go back to our diagram, we can see that our last bit of our recess is 7 millimeters up. So we need to go in a further 7 millimeters. So we're going to press modify and we're going to select this area here. And we're also going to be very careful to select the circle in the middle. And if you don't do that, you won't have your screw hole. So you need to have your screw hole. So we're going to go in and we're going to go up -7. We've now created that recess area for the cables to run. The battery clip will sit nicely on there. The screw hole will fit nicely in there. And that should all work for us.